Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Solo ReacTalk. This morning, I'm going to be reacting to the betrayal at Calth video, related video, I should say. It's the 13th Legion Ultramarines Origin and History, Warhammer 40,000 and Heresy Lore made on the Oculus Imperia YouTube channel. Yes, if you guys want to check out my previous reaction to the betrayal at Calth prologue, remember that the card for my reactions to Warhammer 40k is going to be at the top right here. You'll be able to find the video in that playlist. If you want to check out the original video as well as Oculus Imperia's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Okay, let's start with the 13th Legion Ultramarines, Origins and History. 3, 2, 1, go.
Duty. Its pursuit is the metric by which so many of those who hold aloft the sword or the firearm are judged. It is a calling for those who take to the field of battle in defense of an ideology, or a nation, or a species. There are some who consider it an archaic concept, needless and shapeless ideal in an age ill-suited for such apparently noble aspirations. For what is the duty of a soldier but to kill? And what is killing but a hideous and barbaric act?
Yeah, it is a hideous and barbaric act, but we also kill to survive. We kill to protect. We kill for love. We kill out of hatred. It is sad that we do this to ourselves and to other species across the galaxy. But, you know, that is how life continues to exist or continues to persevere. It's strange, but there it is.
Yet, for those who chase this aspiration, it is a calling that brings a nobility to that barbarity, meaning to the senseless hell of war. Conflict can be an inferno of raging irrationality, and in duty, well, a clear light is found, cutting a path through all the morass of blood and death. The soldiers of the Emperor's Great Crusade had duties, stirred within their hearts by the pounding words of the iterators and the omnipresent gaze of the Master of Mankind himself. To unite the race of humanity, to bring the very stars themselves to heel under our control. In the quest for this ideal, there were those amongst his greatest legions that evolved the path of duty into something akin to high art. Know then that this is a record of the paragons of the Legiones Astartes, those who relentlessly pursued the noblest ideals, but never at the cost of their pragmatism. The 13th Legion, Ultramarines.
The blue, gold, and white. Yeah.
The first founding of the Emperor's Legiones Astartes was undertaken during the cataclysmic crucible of the Unification Wars upon the human homeworld of Terra. Common across all during this time of forging was an initial alpha induction phase, where several thousand potential Astartes were implanted with the Legion's gene seed in order to determine the genetic material's viability and to sift out any potentially unforeseen mutations or complications.
I don't think they'll find any of that when it comes to the gene seed of the Ultramarines. Theirs is one of the most stable, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And that is one of the reasons why the 13th Legion can field 250,000 Space Marines because their gene seed is stable, and they can induct more Astartes into that legion at a far more quicker pace than other legions, because they have complications. The other legions have complications. It's either with the gene seed, or it's the influence of other factors related to the Primarch, and it also affects the rest of the legion. So yes, the stability of their gene seed is one of the pillars that allow the Ultramarines to be where they are, 10,000 years ago in the past, and also 10,000 years into the present, in the 42nd or 41st millennium.
Such issues were of an especial concern. The Emperor and his genesmiths had noted marked deviations in many of his legions during this period. The Eighth Legion, for example, developed pale skin and eyes that balked at the harsh, radiation-soaked sunlight of Terra's wastelands, but functioned superlatively in its darker dungeons. The Ninth Legion, by no means of official explanation, were transformed into transhumans of angelic countenances, but were in possession of appetites altogether more dreadful. The neophytes of the new 13th Legion, however, faced the rigors of Astartes' ascension and emerged with firm passes. The Legion's genetic template yielded full implanted organ functionality, with no notable mutations or deviations from the admittedly only recently established baselines. Psychological profiling, undertaken during the Legion's alpha induction, indicated that hierarchical esteem was an endemic trait amongst the 13th.
This is how they used to, or this is the color of their armor before they joined Robute Guilliman. Oh, okay. Crusader armor.
They displayed a natural deference to authority and a supreme dedication towards the completion of orders and objectives as a coherent whole.
Like father, like son.
This was especially notable alongside fellow legions undergoing similar induction waves. The Fifth Legion, for example, displayed a notable tendency towards individualistic beliefs and behaviors, as did the 12th and 6th, the latter being so ill-disciplined that they alone among the Emperor's foundling 20 required disciplinary officers to keep them cohesive. Aggression in the 13th, too, was perfectly in line with acceptable margins for Astartes. All reports circulated throughout the Emperor's laboratories spoke highly of the 13th gene seed mark. While not trending towards combat specification, the Astartes of the newborn legion were soldiery par excellence.
Excellence. Hey, I'm proud of them.
Delivering, even in this early stage, a force of arms that could bring all the transhuman fury expected of their gene seed strain, but tempered with an inherent discipline and superlative willingness to simply do as they were told.
As they were meant to be. This is what the Emperor intended for all the Astartes, to do as you were expected to do. No questions asked. No contemplating your future participation after the galactic conquest, after the crusade. You're not supposed to ask questions. You're not supposed to think about your future. You're not supposed to worry about your contributions in the crusade and the fact that it's going to be handed over to humanity. That's not your business. That's not your problem. You're supposed to just do your job and do it diligently, and that's it. And the Ultramarines fit that perfectly. They're not going to be asking questions. They're not going to be doubting their superiors. You're a tool. And you're supposed to perform like any tool. Don't think of yourself of any higher importance, because you're not. That's how the Astartes mindset should have been when it involves all the legions. Because the custodians understand this. They know that they are tools. They know that they have a purpose. And once that purpose is done, they will be thrown out and they will not fight against it. If the Emperor commands it, they will die on their swords. You should be the same. And I think the Ultramarines are close to that type of discipline.
Owing to this relatively incredible genetic stability, Terran recruitment for the 13th Legion was not limited to any one area or genealogical subgroup.
Wow, look at Terra. You can still see the outlining of the African continent, the Arabian Peninsula, and then South America there. Wow, and the Mariana Trench, kinda up north.
The Mid-Afric Hive oligarchs, the sub-equatorial Maglev clans from Panpokro, or even the anthropophagic reavers of the Caucasus wastes, were all plied by the Legion's enlistment press gangs. But as diverse in culture, ethnicity, and location as even these three examples alone are, keen scholar acolytes of the Unification Wars may discern one especial pattern from amongst these groups. They all possessed a marked resistance to the unification that was offered by the Emperor.
If they offer resistance, they will die at the hands of the Thunder Warriors or at the hands of the Astartes that are coming up.
All of these regions had resisted the Emperor's armies to the bitter end, being brought into the imperial fold not by negotiation, but near abject extermination. Their ruling regimes had been broken and gutted, and their populations had been rendered as little better than refugees, plying Terra's most well-worn trade routes. It has been theorized by imperial scholars that the ease of adoption and psychological reformatting that typified the 13th Legion's gene seed was a final weapon against these intractable populations. Effectively, the Legion was a means by which what remained of their best and brightest young warriors could be transformed into exemplars of the imperial cause, and, more importantly, denied to these cultures as recruits for some sort of recidivistic terrorist movement.
And thus it also kills any future prospects of resistance and, their children are then to become loyal subjects of the Imperium of Man, and the elderly, the parents of these children, they have nothing left to them. They can't continue their culture and way of life through their children, because now they've been radically changed and indoctrinated in the ways of the Imperium of Man.
Per Alex Govion, in their seminal Tactica Occidentalis, an examination of storied campaigns of the 13th Legion during the course of the Shadow Crusade, with diverse discussions upon the trials and tribulations of the realm of Ultramar, the 13th Legion were a, quote, masterful tool of population control. Here, cast as if by an artist working their marble, were the foot soldiers of unity, come to take away your sons and transform them into the image of your enemy, and there was nothing you could do to stop them. They were the Emperor's genetic authority, the Lord of Lightning's command over the human genome itself. This hypothesis sees further evidence in the fact that the 13th Legion was, by what records survive, seemingly never deployed against other areas of the homeworld that, similar to their recruitment grounds, were holding out bitterly against the tide of unity. While the 7th and 8th Legions saw heavy action in the closing days of the Unification Wars, the 13th's first active deployment was alongside the 16th Legion during the lunar pacification waged against the Moon's gene cults. The invasion would see the 16th Legion granted its first cognomen, the Luna Wolves, and for the 13th, earned them numerous campaigns during the Solar Reclamation.
But it seems like they stuck with the name the 13th. I don't hear them getting any sort of accolade, some sort of name that would distinguish them from all the other legions. They're still being called the 13th.
Including many honors won during the brutal extermination of the Sol system's 10th and artificial planet, the Xenos war moon of Sedna, on the outer edges of the Kuiper Belt. The war orphans of Terra were performing admirably.
Is that going to be their name? War Orphans of Terra?
Showing not one iota of the rebellious spirit of their birth populaces. Owing to the manner of their recruitment, they were informally dubbed the Warborn by their fellows. No official...
The Warborn, okay. Yeah, I like Ultramarines better. I wonder where did they get that name? Was it from Robuta Gilliman himself? I wonder, because they are Warborns. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. That's a bad name.
Official records remain as to the reaction this engendered. The 13th appears to have borne it with a subtle pride, seeing the discarding of their barbarian origins in favor of the imperial cause as the noblest of all callings, despite it having been anything but voluntary. Following the Solar Reclamation, the outward imperial expansion of the human realm was a thundering military juggernaut. The Emperor's genius was writ large in those early days, as the population base of the Terran Imperium was merged with the logistical and material might of the Mechanicum of Mars to create a simply extraordinary pace of galactic conquest. The 13th Legion was at the Imperial vanguard, courting the highest favor of the Emperor's War Council. They proved disciplined to a fault, but unlike the brittle and brutish tactics of the 4th Legion, the so-called corpse grinders, or the forlorn, stubborn last stands that cost the 18th Legion so heavily, the 13th's superlative skills in adaptation allowed it to achieve marked tactical success over a staggeringly diverse range of Xenos enclaves and human regimes encountered by the early Crusade.
Even without their Primarch, the Warborn are very effective. Even without their Primarch at their side, they are extremely effective, extremely organized and disciplined. And they don't have this individualistic mindset, they have a collective mindset. It doesn't get any better than this. It doesn't get any better than this.
All while keeping casualties to a minimum. The previous 2 legions mentioned had similarly high retention rates to their gene seed, but psychological deviances towards both acceptance of attrition and refusal to retreat meant that they were never able to approach the tally of victories the 13th was able to achieve.
It's because those legions are also afflicted with human emotions of like pride. They have a lot of pride. They think themselves to be warriors that need no help, that are superior to all monsters and Xenos and humankind. And that is why they will die in droves. Because some of them would not even accept defeat, retreat, reassess, and then come up with a new strategy to defeat your enemies. They can't do that. They would rather fight to the death than to be having this shame of retreating.
That the Emperor had designed each of his legions to bear a mixture of temperament and ability distinct from that of their fellows is unquestionable. It is historical fact. But this application within the field brought a practical reality that was perhaps quite different from one theorized in a lab on Terra. The 13th bore not the fury of the revenant 9th, nor the subtlety of the clandestine 20th, but in them was born a mixture of strictness and resolution that made them perfect for large theater-level operations, especially ones that placed them in close alignment with other Imperial forces.
Like the Imperial Guard. Oh, well, they weren't called the Imperial Guard before. I forgot what they were called, but, regular human soldiers. The Warborn are perfectly suited to work in conjunction with other human beings because they don't see humans as lesser than them and, would be callous with regular human soldiers. They wouldn't do that. It's against their logical mind and the efficiency on a war, in a war effort, if I can say that. They wouldn't just throw away lives needlessly just to gain a small victory. They would properly plan in conjunction with the human auxiliary forces against their enemies in the most efficient and logical way to defeat their enemies. And they still continue this tradition even in the 42nd or 41st millennium. And that is why the Ultramarines are so well known. It is why they are also highly respected as a legion, or as a chapter, I should say. And even their, what do they call them again? Successor chapters, yes. Even their successor chapters are also well known because, they are very cooperative. They're not insular. They don't, see themselves as more important than the greater machine. They understand that they are a cog in the machine.
They worked better than perhaps any other legion, with regiments of the XIII Imperialis and Solar Auxilia.
XIII Imperialis.
This cohesion grew to such a degree that on numerous occasions, Astartes cadres from the 13th were dispatched to serve as tactical or disciplinary advisors to newly founded regiments from newly compliant regimes, an act most other legions derided as being utterly beneath their honor, their time, or their resources.
You see? Pride. It's a sickness. It's a sickness that it has afflicted all those other legions. And that is why when the crusade was reaching its closing date, many of those legions started to question their future, saying that what's going to happen to us now, since we have conquered all that could be conquered, defeated all that could be defeated for the Imperium of Man. What's next for us? Are we to just be thrown out? Is all of our hard work going to be passed over to human beings who know nothing of our pain or nothing about our sacrifice? That's the type of mindset that they have. That pride that gets in the way of their duty. And it costed many of those legions, their loyalty to the Imperium of Man. And they turned against the Imperium of Man with their primarchs. Because of these warrior lodges, where they could discuss about the notions of, betraying, the notions of rising up against the emperor and his, dreams or plans that he has for the galaxy.
It was, of course, far from a pointless waste of time. The 13th would use these missions with mortal soldiers to catalogue and inload as much information, martial or cultural, about these newly refound societies as possible.
They do like collecting a lot of information on not just their enemies but their allies as well, so that they can be properly prepared for any sort of conflict that might occur. And I like that about them. Yeah.
seeking to broaden their understanding of recently defeated foes in order to better combat future ones. Diversification and, more importantly, codification of military stratagems was fast becoming the Legion's hallmark, and their appetite for new martial knowledge was relentless.
Like father, like son.
By the third decade of the Great Crusade, the Legion had attained a character truly unique from their cousins. Recorded interactions with other members of the Great Crusade show that in personal disposition they were forthright and honest, having little time for abstracts or esoterics, but never as cold and mechanistic as, say, their comrades in the Iron Tenth. On the field of battle, their modus revolved around the swift accomplishment of specific predefined tactical objectives, assigned to different Astartes on a squad-based level by a strict delineation of combat roles. The result was that, as the battle progressed, the 13th's successes would form a rising crescendo of miniature victories, culminating in a theater-wide ultimate triumph. Despite being renowned for their pragmatism, they were not without their own sense of honor. As a whole, the 13th were markedly competitive with their cousins, especially those that had been reunited with their Primarchs, against whom they routinely pitted themselves, metaphorically, of course, in attempting to outdo tallies of victories. Armorial pick archives show that during this period, the Legion was adopting a tradition of wearing the honors worn in one campaign or another. For example, those companies that had been crucial in the Abhuman Annihilation campaigns in the Canceri Nebula embraced the Midnight Blue and Death's Heads emblems of the 8th Legion with whom they had fought, while the heavy armor companies crucial in the Cipra Mundi triumph wore a blazing emerald upon their right pauldrons to commemorate the incandescent green atmosphere aurorae of that specific world. Yet throughout these years, no formal name had been granted the Legion by explicit request of the Legion itself. The Legion's first Lord Commander, Gren Vesotho, is recorded to have said, quote, "I am told that once the numeral 13th was taken as an ill omen by the weak-minded and those enslaved to the lies of superstition. But in the Emperor's service, we shall make it a byword for redemption and glory." Nevertheless, informal cognomens developed, as is typical in essentially any military campaign. The Warborn is a name we have already discussed, but rather than one being attached to the Legion as a whole, those companies that had one of the aforementioned honors or other, or those to whom a particular method of warfare had become the de jure assignment, were successful in earning titles of their own. Many survived.
So different companies had different names, but all under the umbrella of the 13th. Okay.
Through the heresy years, and then afterwards still. Nemesis, the Aurorans, the Mentors. These are all names that will no doubt be immediately recognizable to any scholar of the Adeptus Astartes. Designations which, with reasonable certainty, can be traced back to individual companies within the 13th days as a nameless legion. 3 decades into the Great Crusade, and the Legion's numbers had expanded exponentially. From the 8,000 that had left the solar system, the 13th now counted 33,000 Astartes amongst their number.
From 8 to 33. Wow, these guys were big from the very beginning, you know. They were expanding their numbers from the very beginning. It didn't just explode once they found their Primarch. They were already building up the numbers before they met their Primarch. Yeah, like I stated before in the prologue, if you want to conquer the galaxy, you're going to need the 13th. If you are an opponent of the 13th Legion, then you're going to have to take them seriously. You're going to have to defeat them with overwhelming firepower and numbers. They're the first threat that you need to contain or neutralize. Yeah.
Primarily owing to their tactics, based as they were on prioritizing the avoidance of combat losses, the Legion benefited extremely well from the inherent stability of their gene seed, allowing them to claim something of a lion's share of potential recruitment candidates. The War Council, after all, reasoned that the coin of human lives were better spent in the genetic forges of the 13th than other markedly unstable legions like the 15th.
I would agree wholeheartedly. I would agree. The more stable the gene seed, the more I would focus on more humans to be implanted with that gene seed than all the other ones. Yeah.
The 13th's primary battle group was granted full autonomy from the primary Imperial expeditionary fleets.
Wow.
Those consisting at the time of the Emperor's own generalship, Horus's command of his Lunar Wolves, and what remained of the maimed 3rd Legion, and Ferrus Manus's 10th Legion, Iron Hands. These other battle groups formed the trident of advances into the wider galaxy. But, besides them, the 12th Expeditionary Fleet of the 13th Legion was assigned to the exploration and conquest of the dense core systems of the inner galactic disk. Success was immediate and consistent. The Legion made what the Divisio Militaris regarded as excellent progress, bringing
excellence
worlds into compliance with minimal losses and infrastructural damage. But at the same time, not withholding the genocidal power of humanity whenever alien worlds were encountered.
Of course. I'm under no illusion when it comes to that. I know.
This progress would, unfortunately, be arrested when word reached the 12th Expeditionary Fleet of a crisis brewing in the Osiris cluster. A group of 11 star systems in close proximity to one another, the Osiris cluster nestled in the inner portion of Segmentum Solar's 2nd quadrant. Without warning, it had declared its intent to secede from the Imperium, a profound act of resistance that the nascent empire could not possibly brook. Chartist merchant shipping had been seized, and all word had been lost with Imperial governors and iterators within the volume. Now,
there's only one solution to this, and unfortunately, it's going to be blood and destruction. They will have to quash this little rebellion. Yeah.
Now, being presumed dead. That the Imperium had been taken by surprise here was obvious, yet understandable. The cluster had seen a relatively bloodless compliance, many of its worlds joining the Imperium willingly, and others presenting only the resistance of certain vested interest groups. The 13th Legion had a hand in many of these compliances. The cluster's rebuke of the Imperium was now a threat to their honor and their victory tally. It simply could not stand. As it happened, the 12th Expeditionary Fleet was the closest in proximity and as yet unengaged in active compliance operations.
This is the perfect opportunity,
making the Divisio Militaris' redeployment requests an incredibly easy decision for Legion Master Gren Vesotho. A full invasion was immediately launched in the Septus system, deemed by intelligencers as the rebel headquarters. The 12th Expeditionary Fleet crashed into real space and swept forward towards Septus 12. Vesotho was following the tried-and-true spear-tip tactic favored by Horus Lupercal and his Lunar Wolves. The 13th Legion seeking to emulate the Primarch and end this rebellion as soon as humanly possible, with a decapitation strike against its leadership. Vesotho's command staff drew upon the wealth of knowledge they had gained about the world, its culture, and its technological capabilities that they had diligently logged and codified following the Legion's role in the cluster's compliance.
It's good that they have that information, and yeah, they intend to kill them with their first shot and to kill them completely, making sure that they don't have a chance to regroup and to continue their resistance against the government of the Imperium of Man.
The combination of such tactical acumen and the 16th Primarch's most devastating military maneuver assured Master Vesotho and his senior staff that a quick victory was assured. It was quite the historical shame that every single assumption they made was completely wrong. The attack on Septus XII targeted an environmentally sealed hive city termed Cabasset by the locals. Orbital strikes pierced its outer shell, the great rents torn in the protective shielding, the perfect breach for Vesotho to lead a mass aerial drop by Legion Stormbird wings. Resistance was immediate, and far, far more resolute than the 13th had predicted. The just-landed Astartes were assailed, at first by hundreds and then thousands of civilians in a tidal mob, the humanity of the world seemingly rising as one against the invaders like antibodies upon a bacterium.
Wow. The fact that there's such, cohesion, if I can call it that. Can I call it cohesion? But everybody, all these civilians attacking at once, knowing that they're facing death. All of them. Wow. Okay.
Dead-eyed Hab residents, seemingly sewn into pressure suits, charged Astartes' lines, using mining blast charges as crude but devastatingly effective suicide bombs.
They sound like Kriegers. They sound like Kriegers, honestly, the way they're just throwing themselves upon these Astartes with the explosives. Wow.
The 13th responded in admirable time, shifting tactics to attempt to stymie the horde and inflict mass casualties. The enemy, however, was completely different to what they had been actively planning for. Vesotho broke Legion protocols in order to continue this attack, unwilling to lose the beachhead that they had so sorely achieved. Reinforcements that had not been expected to even be required were hurriedly deployed from orbit, and advances were finally mounted deeper into the hive, the Legion claiming predetermined objectives with their customary professionalism, but only doing so at the cost of starkly higher than average casualty rates. It was not until numerous objectives had been captured, and the Legion fully committed and embedded within the hive city, that the actual trap was finally sprung.
They have more traps? Wow. It's extremely difficult to take down Astartes with their power armor, with their physicality, with the weapons that they have, with the equipment they have in space, or should I say the assets they have in space, and the ones that are, in the atmosphere. All of this mechanized, military units, this overwhelming force on this hive city, it should bulldoze any sort of resistance. But the human population of this place, they are brave to a point where it doesn't seem like it's human. Really, this type of firepower should have broke their will to continue on the fight. But they keep pushing. They even have more plans in store for the Warborns, or the 13th, I should just call them. Yes, the 13th.
From within the corona of Septus's star emerged 5 hourglass-shaped starships, clearly Xenos in origin, but of an unknown provenance.
Hourglass? Okay, interesting.
Shipboard Sensoria registered them approaching the orbital volume of the planet with astonishing speed.
Maybe this is why the Hive City is so adamant that they can fight against these Astartes and win. Because they have Xeno allies with hourglass shaped vessels. Sounds like a base star. It sounds like a base star. Well, yeah, no. Well, the older styled base stars from Battlestar Galactica, from the first Battlestar Galactica show. Yeah, not the earlier 2000 and what is it? 2004 Battlestar Galactica. No, not that. No, not the new TV show, but the older TV show. Yeah.
Realizing the trap that was falling upon his legion, Vesotho ordered an immediate retreat, only to find his ground forces facing renewed and somehow more ferocious assaults. Waiting Stormbirds were assaulted by a horde of an unprecedented size, mobs of civilians using industrial tools to try and cripple the machines, as hundreds of their fellows attempted to pin Astartes in place through sheer weight of numbers. In the void above...
This doesn't sound normal, guys. This does not sound normal.
Battle was joined, the guns of the fleet made fully active only just in time, thanks to the exceptional training of the crews to exacting Legion standards. The weaponry of the unknown enemy was devastating, a form of exotic particle whip that tore at void shield and hull alike, while answering torpedo barrages and interceptor flights were swallowed whole by what appeared to be caged gravitational singularities. The 12th Expeditionary Fleet fought as best they could, driving one of the strange starships to retreat, but only at the cost of a dozen Imperial ships. Withdrawal of the Xenos craft signaled a new stage of the battle, as the mysterious enemy finally made physical presence. Encased in what appeared to be biomechanical containment suits, Xenos boarders materialized via teleportation assault on surviving Imperial ships, assaulting the crews not only with ethereal fire projected from their wrist-mounted gauntlets, but also psychic powers, undermining the very minds of the humans aboard.
Kill them! Kill the psycho witches! Kill the Xeno witches!
Vesotho's final act from the surface was to issue a full-scale withdrawal order, not only from the planet, but from orbit and the system. To the Legion Master's credit, this was done far sooner than any of his contemporaries may have ordered it. Vesotho ensured his life was sold, covering the retreat of his Astartes by Stormbird. His final act was to transfer all command to a successor, Marius Gage.
Marius Gage. Are you somehow related? Or should I say, is Marius Calgar Augustus Calgar, is he somehow related to Marius Gage? Somehow?
Largely thanks to Vesotho's call to retreat and Gage's own professionalism, what could have been an utter disaster had been turned merely into a bitter defeat, but one that was to wound the Legion not just in body. The Xenos strain, later named by Mechanicum Biologus adepts as the Osiran Cybrids, had enslaved the populations of the cluster through grand psychic manipulation.
No wonder why. Because what they were doing to the Space Marines, I mean, it's just not normal. Everybody just huddling onto the Astartes, piling on the Astartes, trying to kill them, knowing fully well that they might actually die in the process. You know? Not everybody is brave. There will be people who will run away. There will be people who will, not participate in running towards an Astartes and trying to slow them down with their bodies or with whatever they have in their possession. But now it's understandable. They were being manipulated by these Xeno witches. They were being controlled like puppets.
This first contact had cost the 13th Legion some 6,500 Astartes.
If it was any other legion, it would be bad. But because but because the 13th Legion have, grown in numbers, yes, it is still a serious loss, but it could be far worse if they just had only around 8,000, 10,000 Space Marines. But because they have 33,000, this number is not it's not that bad. Yeah.
The worst single loss in the Legion's history, not even counting the death of their Legion Master. Approximately 20% of its overall strength had died, and the vast majority of those had been Terran veterans who had served with the 13th since the Unification Wars. Marius Gage was now in command of a bloodied legion that nested within itself a cancer of doubt. Never before had the 13th been so humbled. Never before had their tactical acumen been so thoroughly subverted, and their confidence as a fighting force was nearly shattered by the experience.
And now their Primarch comes in to save them from themselves. Yeah.
Reorganizing, redeploying, and rearming with astonishing speed, the 13th Legion threw itself into the fires of a short, honorless purgation campaign, scouring the Osiris cluster of the Cybrids and their mind thralls, burning world after world so that they may yet bear the tread of Imperial colonists in the future. What emerged was a legion that found its pride still smarting, its certainty still shaky, and its future unclear. But as the expeditionary fleet began to forge a path towards the galactic east, a revelation was set to occur. The Primarch of the 13th Legion is perhaps the most renowned of all in Imperial history. Notwithstanding his present role, reborn into our benighted epoch as the resurrected Lord Commander of the Imperium,
the Avenging Sun, Raburte Gilliman.
The Primarch ensured that tales of his early life were made widely available for Imperial iterators, being keenly aware of the propaganda coup his personal legend was for the fledgling Imperium. While age, ideology, and redactionism have all played their parts in embellishing and distorting the truth biographical, studious examination of what records survive allow a clearer picture to emerge. Rabut Guliman had fallen in his birthing capsule, scattered from Terra by dark and insidious powers, to the mountainous planet of Macragge in the eastern fringes of the galaxy. Unlike so many of humanity's furthest-flung colonies, Macragge had preserved much of its society through the wretched millennia of the Age of Strife. Its success in retaining what treasures of the Dark Age of technology it yet did was thanks in part to a deeply authoritarian society, predicated around the preservation of the social order at all human cost, but additionally the almost miraculous preservation of warp-capable spacecraft. Through these, and numerous other sublight vessels, Macragge was able to retain contact with nearby inhabited worlds in its local volume, however tenuous and dangerous the connection may have been. In doing so, the planet was able to prosper and survive, while so many other human worlds regressed or simply faded into the ashes of history. So it was that when the infant Primarch was discovered by a group of Macraggian nobility on a hunting trip, they knew instantly that this was a device of science and technology, as opposed to the superstitious reactions of those who had discovered Primarchs fallen upon less advanced worlds.
I mean, imagine if Roberto Gilliman landed on those planets, with rudimentary technology, if I can say that, with primitive technology. If he landed on such planets, I think he would go mad. He would go mad. But, yeah, by a stroke of luck, you landed on Macragge.
One of them, Conor Gulliman, adopted the child as his own, recognizing him as something truly unique. The child Robut displayed the same rapid growth and advanced learning capabilities as his brothers did on their adopted homeworlds, but with a noticeable predisposition towards the assimilation of philosophic, scientific, and historical knowledge, as well as the ability to deduce astonishingly accurate conclusions from what, to others, would have been deemed essentially fragmentary information. As is common with all authoritarian societies throughout history, the youth's talents were naturally bent to the art of war-making, a lauded skill upon totalitarian Macragge, and Conor swiftly saw the rapidly becoming unparalleled capacity for generalship his foster son possessed. One such campaign against tribal raiders in the planet's northern reaches saw Robut achieve stunning successes with historically minimal losses, bringing the tribes to heel under the rulership of the Macraggian regime. However, upon the Primarch's return to the Civitas, the planetary capital, a tragedy was about to occur. With the army dispatched to the north, a coalition of aristocrats under a local official named Galen had launched a coup d'etat against Conor Gulliman. These malcontents were ill at ease with the consul's regime, having preferred the ancient order of a feudal society that had, they claimed, preserved Macragge through the years of strife.
They sound like the High Lords of Terror that were against Robut Gilliman and his reforms. They sound like the static, ideal coalition, High Lords of Terror members who were trying to perform a coup against the government led by Robut Gilliman, and they were all executed or assassinated or killed, I should just say. Yeah, they were all killed. So yeah, this group of aristocrats that are led by Galen wanting to preserve their way of life sound very much like those High Lords of Terror who also try to preserve their authority, their power, and the way of life in the Imperium of Man. Yeah.
Whereas previously a collection of aristocracy had commanded the entirety of the world's capital and technology under conditions of familial inheritance and land ownership, Conor, backed by a coalition of wealthy industrial magnates, had been pushing through a vast array of reforms aimed nominally at improving the living conditions of the planet's populace, but additionally forcing the aristocracy, through legislation, to invest in ambitious infrastructure projects their corporate interests controlled monopolies in. Seeing the ongoing tribal conflict as an opportunity to seize the reins of power, the aristocratic cabal struck when Conor and his reform movement were weakest, his demigod son far away. Robut returned home to find Macragge Civitas aflame. Mercenary soldiers, bought from the deep coffers of the old regime, had stormed the Senate building, and while Conor had rallied what troops remained in a 3-day defense of the legislative complex, he had fallen. The Primarch found his adopted father bloody and broken, but still clinging to life. The senior Gilliman survived in his son's arms long enough to recount the names of those who betrayed him.
Uh-oh.
Robut's rage was cold, shackled even now by the rationality the Primarch had come to pride himself upon, but no less violent and merciless in its application. The rebels, having moved on to looting the city, were crushed by the Loyalist army, seasoned as they were now from long campaigns and unbreakably loyal to the commander that had ensured they were fed, clothed, and billeted better than they had ever been in their careers. Civilian mobs raised by anti-reform rhetoric were similarly dispatched. The bodies of the worst offenders, participants merely in a system of their own exploitation, were hung in the streets for all to see. order was restored with breathtaking speed. Reboot, as Konor's son, was hereditarily elevated to the role of consul, and, with the aristocratic class now the enemy of the state, the Primarch's office professed sole control over planetary authority.
I didn't know that Calith was so close to Macragge. Oh my gosh. That, like, literally next door. I didn't know that. Phew.
All lands belonging to the aristocracy, both rebel and previously loyal, were seized. All of their capital, secured either in banking systems or private reserves, were also seized and dispensed to the corporate interests of Konor's Reform Party.
Nocturne, Trigoris. Wow. I didn't know they were so close to Macragge. These very important planets, because that's where, Primarchs. Which Primarch was it? From Trigoris, the Warhawk. I forgot his name right now. Oh, Jagatai Khan, yes. Jagatai Khan comes from Trigoris, Nocturne. No, I don't think a Primarch comes from Nocturne. No. I don't think so. What's that planet there? Sigrus. Okay, I don't think any... No Primarch comes from that planet. But Trigoris, definitely. Trigoris or Chogoris, yes, I think that's definitely the Warhawk's homeworld, if I'm not mistaken. Wow. But Calith, so close to Macragge, that's a shock.
Rebel ringleaders were rounded up and sentenced, not to immediate death, but to hard labor, to rebuild the shattered civitas by hand, stone by stone. Needless to say, they did not survive long. Reboot's transformation of Macragge was total, enforced with such precision of vision as only a Primarch could possess, but one who had been the beneficiary of an upbringing where he wanted for nothing, not comfort, not occupation, nor education. In place of the feudal regime of times past, the son of Konor brought his father's vision of a capitalist meritocracy to fruition. Hard work and honor were soundly publicly praised, and those who epitomized both were raised to believe that they could rise from the lowliest peasant to holding the loftiest position of the land. The shirking of strict civic responsibilities and legal obligations were tantamount to treason, and those that did would find themselves swiftly punished under a revitalized legal system penned by the Primarch himself.
I'm sure you'll work in hard labor until you die.
Technology, long since hoarded by the nobility, was disseminated throughout the upper echelons of Macraggian society in order to utterly reform its infrastructural capabilities, and with it, its production capacities.
And this is what I like about Roboute Guilliman. Unlike his father, who wants to guide humanity, Roboute Guilliman is supporting humanity. There's a difference. There's a difference when it comes to these two words, in guiding and supporting humanity. Roboute Guilliman is supporting us in making sure that we are able to develop, we are able to harness the power, the technology, and understand it and use it effectively to grow our civilizations, right? But when it comes to the Emperor, he wants to guide us. And when you guide someone who does not want to listen, you crack the whip. You crack the whip on them. You instill fear into them. You instill any sort of hope in them, but through very conniving and manipulative ways, because you want to guide them down the path that you believe is correct. And that is the main difference I have understood when it comes to Roboute Guilliman and the Emperor. And that is why I'm also stating that if the Emperor should ever return, it's going to be a bad day for all of us. It's going to be a very, very bad day for all of us. At least with Rubute, he will support us. We will pick ourselves on our own 2 feet as the Imperium of Man, slowly but surely. He lives forever. He's immortal. He will be with us for a very, very long time. So he has all the time in the world, to support us in lifting ourselves up from the doldrums that we've been in for the past 10,000 years. But if the Emperor should return, it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be a nightmare for all of us. Not just because of the Astronomicon, losing, or should I say the Astronomicon no longer being active. That's the least of our concerns. That's the least of our concerns. The Emperor is going to crack the whip on us again. He's going to commence another crusade to kill this notion of him being a god, And we don't want more bloodshed like that. We've had it with the crusade. That's enough. It didn't work out the way he planned it. And we can't afford another one of his plans as humanity. We can't afford it. So I would always stick with Rubute Gilliman because he supports us. He doesn't want to guide us. No.
Little was Reboot to know that as he reorganized society to match his vision, his true father, the Emperor of Mankind, had been battling warp storms to reach Macragge itself. Having made contact with the planet Espandor 5 Terran-year standards beforehand, the Emperor had learned of the son of Conor, as Espandor was on the fringes of Macragge's stellar sphere of contact. When the flagship of the Imperium finally breached real space in Macragge's system, the Master of Mankind found a world of total order awaiting him. Macragge had prospered under the technological reforms of Gilliman, who had reorganized its stellar fleets to establish frequent and well-protected trading routes with outer colonies, in order to transport resources back to the homeworld, ensuring the flow of economic goods across the volume. Indeed, when the Emperor's own battleship entered the system, he was hailed by a patrol group of ships in impeccable combat formation, who, despite being vastly outgunned by the Imperial fleet, stood their ground and demanded to know the identities of these new visitors. The meeting between father and son was said to have been warm, with the Emperor well pleased by the society he found, and Gilliman beyond delighted to have found his true father, to whom he swore immediate fealty. As rapidly as it was possible to achieve, the 13th Legion was assigned to Gilliman, who, upon learning of the Emperor's ongoing crusade, needed no urging to take up arms for the imperial cause. The same deference for authority inherent within the Legion he would now possess was there for any who had the ken to observe it in the Primarch, although these few kept their observations to private logs, nevertheless. The Legion, having suffered the cataclysm of the Osiris cluster, saw in their returned progenitor renewed purpose, having what doubts remained dispelled by the power of Gilliman's patrician oratory. The Primarch's assumption of command was seamless in the deference the Legion showed to him, and, of course, could not have come without him placing his unique mark upon their operational aims. Not content with simply wielding a weapon of war, Gilliman envisaged his new legion as a self-contained engine of imperialist conquest and reclamation.
I'm sure when they met each other, the Primarch and his Astartes, it must have been like, yes, the 13th. Sorry, I almost called them the Ultramarines. Yes, the 13th Legion. They must have been ecstatic and excited to finally meet their father, but also on a far more logical mindset. They must also be clicking and connecting in ways that other Primarchs and their Astartes could never connect. I'm sure, Roberto Gilliman also must have been a bit surprised and taken aback that his sons are just so easy to work with. They are already very diligent in their work, very disciplined. They have honor, they have a code, they are not fussy, they are not irritable. He just works with them almost immediately. Hand to glove. Fits perfectly. Yeah.
One who would not simply leave a shattered enemy world for others to rebuild, but one who would in their wake actively work to create and maintain orderly, productive, and most importantly, loyal societies.
He's making more McCrags. He's making copy and paste. Yeah.
The Legion was to him not simply the Astartes of the line, but all who aided them, from the serfs of their starships to the workers who manufactured their munitions. Supply chains, logistical corps, starship crews, all of these were as indivisible from the superhuman warriors as these selfsame warriors were from their bolt guns, and all within the entirety of the encompassing Imperium. The first step in Guilliman's reforms was the consolidation of Legion power around Macragge itself. Unlike his brothers, who similarly based their Legion fiefs on their foundling planets, Robout's adopted homeworld itself would simply be the fulcrum around which the 13th base of operations would revolve. Utilizing Imperial resources newly made available to him, the Primarch expanded the Legion's sphere of influence to all planets in Macragge's stellar locality, and from there, outwards and onwards, in an ever-expanding, essentially self-governing realm. Ultramar, as it became rapidly known, was a fertile ground from whence the resurgent 13th Legion would draw its recruits, arms, ammunition, and supplies, and would continue to expand ever outwards, right until the very first days of the Great Heresy.
The 500 worlds of Ultramar. Hey. Yeah, definitely. Roboute Guilliman is the last loyal son. Well, there is also Lionel Johnson, but before Lionel Johnson, he was the last loyal son. The pride of the Emperor, the Emperor's greatest triumph. He didn't have to be awkward around Guilliman. They had a very cordial and friendly, loving discussions, and he got to work almost immediately. So definitely the last loyal son, the pride of the Empire, the Emperor's greatest treasure, humanity's last hope. I should also state that. Humanity's last hope. Imagine if he could copy and paste the 500 worlds of Ultramar throughout the entire Ultima Segmentum. Really, the solar segmentum would pale in comparison to Ultima Segmentum. If Ultima Segmentum was able to emulate what we're seeing in the 500 worlds of Ultramar, I'm telling you that entire segmentum would be the richest, the most developed, the most peaceful and stable segmentum throughout the entire Imperium of Man. Truly, they would have been something amazing. It's just unfortunate that we didn't have the time. There wasn't enough time. The Horus Heresy was fast approaching. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Privileged in location and early life, Guilliman capitalized upon his position as essentially the sole Primarch in the Imperium's eastern fringe, utilizing the industrial base of Macragge to format the worlds under his purview into, essentially, replicas of his adopted homeworld. Investment in these worlds would, as always, be the work of decades, but as the years proceeded, so too would the gains. To the Legion itself, Guilliman reinforced its existing traditions with the meritocratic operational practices of the Macraggian military. The Legion became a rigidly hierarchical formation. Those who comported themselves with skill and honor were rewarded with command and responsibility. But obedience and deference to the chain of command was absolute and inviolable. The 13th had little time for the scramble for personal honor that typified more individualistic Astartes forces, such as the 6th Legion Space Wolves and 8th Legion Night Lords. Doctrine was paramount, but essentially fluid. Legionaries were encouraged to adapt tactics in the field to better suit their enemies, but at the same time would only do so under the watchful eyes of their sergeants and their captains. Outwardly, new uniform livery, in a rich royal blue with white and gold, was adapted, along with the ultimate glyph marking Macragge's volume on ancient star charts, and a new cognomen to match. The 13th Legion were now the Ultramarines. The 12th Expeditionary Fleet, resupplied and rejuvenated, expanded outwards from Ultramar's volume with stunning rapidity, carving a path from the galactic south as far north as the Dominion of Storms and as far southeast as the Ultima Thule, on the fringes of the exogalactic Gulf itself. Records from this time claim that during this century of conquest, the Ultramarines reclaimed more worlds than any other single Primarch had been thought capable of in such a relatively brief time frame, thanks in large part to Guilliman's peerless efficiency of command. The time and energy spent by the Legion paid off dividends in full. The robust supply lines engendered by these flourishing worlds merely served to better maintain the speed of the Crusades' advance, bent entirely as they were to the Imperial war machine, as well as having the benefit of spreading cohesive and loyal Imperial civilization to worlds left in the wake of the military advance. At the same time,
If only, if only Conrad Curse could come learn lessons from his brother, Roboute Guilliman. Come learn how to bring a world into compliance, how to make sure that it stays in compliance, and not to be governed by fear that they will easily overcome once you are gone. Conrad Curse, come and learn from your brother how to really create an empire instead of your sadistic and just cruel ways of trying to subdue a populace through fear. Come and learn. There's no shame in learning.
Ultramarines saw a veritable explosion in numbers. Always in possession of one of the most stable gene seeds amongst the legions, when it was combined with Guilliman's genetic material and the Primarch's own logistical skill, the resulting expansion surpassed the expectations of all, even, according to some, the Emperor himself. Ultramar's hundreds of worlds served to supply the Legion with more recruits than any single Legion fief was capable of yielding, while yet more were continually rendered unto the 13th's gene rights by the perfectly compliant worlds Guilliman left in his wake. This all combined with the Legion's ever-present hatred of the waste inherent in attritional warfare to turn the Ultramarines into something of an expansion juggernaut. More conquests achieved with less casualties yielded more stable worlds for recruitment, which yielded more Astartes, which yielded more conquests with less casualties, and so on and so forth.
It's a build-up to success. It's a build-up to success. It's not the conquest of the galaxy or the crusade over the galaxy is not just to create untold death and destruction and to plant the flag of the Imperium of Man and say that we have won. What have you won? You've won ashes. And you've created, pain and suffering for those who have survived. At least here with Roboute Guilliman's, way of doing things, it creates a winning mentality for, the entire segmentum, Ultima Segmentum, or wherever else he's conquering, in the galaxy in the name of the Imperium of Man. He makes sure that the infrastructure, the knowledge, and the society is salvaged from this situation, and it will grow and it will contribute to the war effort of the crusade, which also in turn contributes to the growth of the Ultramarines. It's just building up to success. If only the other Primarchs and Astartes legions could also see that and understand that, but their pride blinds them to this sort of option and choice that could lead to the betterment of the galaxy. They are too blinded by their own pride to actually see it. And I'm also quite disappointed that, in the Emperor, not telling his sons and the other Astartes legions to look at the Ultramarines as an example. Look at them as an example. What can be achieved. This is the way I want you to do it. Don't build churches in my name. Loga, don't do that. Don't kill people in the hundreds of thousands purely out of fun. Angron. Don't torture people and make them fearful and thinking that you have won over the planet through fear. Conrad, don't do that. Learn from your brother, Robuta Gilliman, how I want you guys to do it. How I want the crusade to be done. Or learn from the Praetorian, Rogel Dorn.
Even when losses were unavoidable, such as the campaigns against the numerous Orc empires and Tanaril infestations, the Legion's capacity for replenishment meant it was brought up to, or in excess of, its previous operational strength within mere solar months. Their achievements won them many laurels, metaphorical and literal, from the War Council, the Divisio Militaris, and several of Guilliman's fellow Primarchs. It did, of course, in some ways, serve to distance the Legion from its contemporaries, and the Primarch from some of his brothers. The Legion's signature theoretical, practical thought exercise, wherein ideas of strategy could be organized and explored between Astartes of any rank, was openly mocked by members of other legions as performative.
Performative? Their success? You're going to call their success performative? Please. Please.
While others still rankled at what they saw as arrogance disguised behind a veil of supposed humility. The Ultramarines, and Guilliman, certainly ensured their public face was one of dutiful modesty, of glories won for the Imperium, not the Legion. But such a character, combined with superlative success by any metrics, would have been bound to draw both criticism and jealousy. By the outbreak of Horus's treason, the Ultramarines were ascendant. Ultramar was known throughout the galaxy as the 500 Worlds, effectively an empire within an empire, a beacon, to many, of what the Imperium was and could one day be. The Legion itself numbered an unheard of 250,000 Astartes, surpassing all their fellows by a considerable degree. The only two potential rivals to this figure can only be estimated as such due to information that emerged during the course of and in the aftermath of the Great Heresy. The Word-Bearers, the 17th Legion, rivals of old to the Ultramarines, had been undertaking a massive and clandestine recruitment campaign to swell their legion in the run-up to the Istvan atrocities, and the betrayal at Calth. Additionally, the 20th Legion, Alpha Legion, had a completely unverifiable strength during those years, but one would be remiss if one did not include their mention, as certain estimates have put that occluded Legion strength north of the 200,000 mark.
If the Alpha Legion were around 200,000, we would have, some sort of evidence of that. You can't hide 200,000 Space Marines. You can't. Unless if they were all concentrated on one planet or in one star cluster, and they never left that location until the Horus Heresy began. Really, I'm not going to take it serious that the Alpha Legion had 200,000. I'm not going to take it seriously.
Regardless, the Ultramarines were the public face of the Astartes' numerical superiority, as well as their achievements and the future that was snapping on the heels of the vaunted 16th Legion Sons of Horus, 9th Legion Blood Angels, and 1st Legion Dark Angels. The 12th Expeditionary Fleet, once considered the totality of the Legion's strength, had years before been subdivided into a dozen or so subgroups, as well as companies from the Legion being dispatched galaxy-wide to lead or support other expeditionary fleets. Tragically, this seemingly untouchable preeminence was to have dire consequences. Jealous hearts, long since festered in treachery, would seek to turn the Legion's greatest accomplishments to dust before their eyes. A world was selected for such an act.
Calth.
A jewel set amidst the heavens, a colonial startup, an attempt by Guilliman to sculpt a world from the ground up in the image of everything he and his Legion and his father were working to create. That planet was Calth. And what would occur? Well, as with all subjects concerning this terrible time, that is a matter for another record. Ave Imperator, Gloria, in excelsis terra. This video and this channel were made possible thanks to the very kind donations and support from my Patreon subscribers. If you'd like to help support the channel, head on over to patreon.com/Oculus Imperia. If you'd like to receive more updates about the channel and any future videos, you can contact me or follow me on Twitter @Oculus Imperia. Otherwise, please like, subscribe, comment, let me know your feedback, and as ever, thank you very much for watching.
Okay, guys, that's it with 13th Legion, Ultramarines, Origins and History, Warhammer 40,000, Horus Lore, or Heresy Lore, made on the Oculus Imperia YouTube channel. Yeah, the 13th Legion, you can now understand why they are the poster boys of the Imperium of Men, why they feature so much or are known so well throughout the Imperium of Men, because of their efficiency, because they work with humanity, they work with any auxiliary forces that belong to the Imperium of Men. They are efficient when it comes to collecting data on their opponents or opponents that they fought before, or just any basic society. And they utilize that information to their advantage in whatever future battles that they might be involved in. They also help in supporting the reconstruction effort of civilizations that have been conquered by the Imperium of Men. They don't just leave them be and wait for an administrator or a governor from the Imperium of Men to come by to the planet and tell the people what to do. No, they actually stay and make sure that there are work teams, that there are people who are going to be reconstructing the civilization and meeting it up with Imperium of Man standards. And this type of work and this type of commitment leaves an effect that is connected to the people, that is connected to how the people will see the Imperium of Man. And the 13th Legion, and then after, or should I say, when they were taken over by Robuta Guilliman, they just became even more of a effective juggernaut in the bulwark for the Imperium of Man. They really grew to become a very dependable and respectable legion that helps humanity in more ways than one. They don't just kill, they teach. They don't just teach, they also build. They don't also build, they also maintain. They maintain what they have built. They maintain what they have taught. They maintain what they have committed themselves to. And it pays in dividends over time. It's a slow build-up to success. And the Ultramarines, really, they are indispensable to the Imperium of Man. They are indispensable. And Primarch Robuta Guilliman, definitely, to humanity, he is indispensable. Because the alternative is not favorable for us. The Emperor is not favorable for us. No. Any of the other Primarchs that will be coming back, also, Lionel Johnson, he is not favorable for us. I don't see him as an administrator. I don't see him as someone who is going to be governing the Imperium of Man or of its millions upon millions of worlds. I just don't see him being that type of person. So, truly, Robuta Guilliman is indispensable to us. He supports humanity. He doesn't want to guide us to some, endgame dream or endgame mission that will have humanity succeed and evolve into the webway. And I don't know what we're going to do in the webway once we're there. But yeah, the Emperor's dream of taking us there. Robuta Guilliman has got nothing to do with that. He is working with what he's got in the galaxy, which is plentiful. You just need the right type of mindset to utilize this galaxy to the highest effective possibility, with hard work, with diligence, with understanding of humanity's needs and wants. And you will give us the utopia that the Emperor is dreaming about. You will give us the utopia that humanity deserves in this galaxy, where chaos will not be defeated 100%. It will never be defeated 100%. But at least, a human-controlled galaxy will have cushion cushion effects that will help us stabilize. And when I say those cushion effects, I'm talking about the economy, I'm talking about infrastructure, I'm talking about the development of a social, imperial, legal, and idyllic standpoint, where all of us have the potential to become something. We won't just be stuck on our homeworlds being servants to rich aristocratic people, and either we fight in the armies or we become Astartes, or we just die in the hive cities working in factories. At least in Robuta Guilliman's support and vision for humanity, we will have choice. We will have choices. We will be able to do things. But if it's with the Emperor, he will whip us into his ideals no matter what. If he doesn't get his way, he will kill us all. So I would rather choose Roberto Guillermin to stay with us for as long as he can. And, he will be our support. Because the other Primarchs who are missing in action, or like Lionel Johnson, who has returned, he's just not it. He might be effective with the Space Marines, but for humanity, he's just not it for us. He's just too far removed from humans. So yeah, I don't think we should depend on him managing humanity or, being a proper administrator. Don't expect that from Lionel Johnson. Don't expect that from the Emperor. He's just too stuck with his dreams and his ambitions. So we need someone who's practical, someone who's down to earth, someone who can talk to us and we can understand what he's saying. And that is Roberto Guillermin, and a legion or a chapter that also supports humanity, and that is the Ultramarines. They are indispensable. Yeah. Alright, that's it, guys. Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as Oculus Imperia's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. If you like my reaction, give it a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with another video pertaining to the betrayal at XIII. Yes. Okay. Bye-bye.